I work as a detective. I'm starting to think my wife is a serial killer. I've seen some horrifying cases in my time as a detective, but I have a feeling this might be my most heartbreaking case ever. My wife and I live in a two-story home that we had built several decades ago. We are a ways away from the bustle of our city and our closest neighbors, who happen to be my son, Hunter, and his family. We enjoy living in relative solitude. I take our German Shepherd, Mr. Morris, on regular walks through the woods to get my mind off my job and the horrors I've experienced throughout my career. But today, my ordinary life all came crumbling down. I started my day off the same as any other. I had a cup of tea, put on my worn sneakers, and took Mr. Morris on a walk at about 6 in the morning. My wife, a school teacher, had already departed for the day. The sun was peeking out over the horizon, bathing the light layer of snow and orange light. Mr. Morris ran out ahead of me, coming to a stop at the pond that we usually fished at. He promptly began barking, staring out across the water. I came to a stop beside him and looked across the black surface. Either my eyes were playing tricks on me, or someone was on the other side of the pond. It was still dark enough that I questioned myself and rubbed my eyes before glancing again at the other bank. Nothing. Mr. Morris continued barking for a few more seconds, but eventually a squirrel caught his attention. I wasn't so easily distracted. I continued to scan the trees across the way, but finally dismissed the subtle movement as that of an animal of some sort. Mr. Morris and I continued our walk without incident. I flipped on the news and sat down with a bacon, egg, and cheese croissant. Mr. Morris likewise lapped up the fresh food that I had placed in his bowl. I took a bite of my croissant and focused on the television set. The newscaster was discussing the disappearance of a local woman, Denise Lawson. I had seen this before. The poor girl had been missing for about 2 weeks now. She was young, about 23 years old, with long red hair and green eyes. For the third time that week, I found myself remembering one of the darkest parts of my career. The disappearances had begun about a decade ago. 6 girls, aged 21 to 24, had mysteriously disappeared over the span of about 2 years. I will never forget their names: Patricia Bledsoe, Karen Whitaker, Julia Voss, Jamie Calloway, Nia Justice, and Felicia Smith. They all had 2 things in common: red hair and green eyes. Only the partial remains of 2 of them had ever been found. There had been no forensic evidence and no groundbreaking leads. Someone claimed to have seen a man with one of the girls on the night she disappeared, but that was about as close as we got to ever identifying the sick person who was taking these girls. This case was more than a little personal for me. Patricia Bledsoe was my wife's niece. I had known her since she was a little girl. I stared down listlessly at my croissant, having suddenly lost my appetite. I put the plate on the end table and got up, headed to my computer and tried to keep my mind occupied with some online solitaire. A few hours later, I got the call. It was, to my surprise, one of the officers from the station that I had known for a few years. "Hey, Detective Vincent," he said. It was my coworker, Barry. He sounded nervous. "How you doing, buddy?" I asked. Barry hesitated. I'm good, Detective Vincent. Sir, it's about your wife." I could feel my insides twisting up, like they had when I had first heard about Patricia's disappearance. "Where's my wife, Barry?" "Sir, we've brought her in for questioning. She's a suspect in the disappearance of Denise Lawson and Tatiana Graves." I got to the station as fast as I could. When I arrived, I confronted the captain, a man I had known and collaborated with for many years. "Eric Lloyd." "Eric, what the hell are you getting at? Bringing my wife here to be hounded for something we both know full and well she didn't effing do?" 3 other officers stepped forward, but Eric subtly waved them off. He was a tall and tired man with a clean-shaven face. He looked me in the eyes before responding. "Look, Dario, you know I have the utmost respect for both you and your wife, Raven. You were at my wedding, for Christ's sake, but I have to do my job regardless. Surely you understand that." I was fuming. What could possibly make you think that Raven was involved in any of these incidents? If I had a criminal living under my roof, don't you think I would know? There was a glint in Eric's eyes, and I already knew what he was going to say. "I don't know, Detective. Your son was committing arson while he was still in your house, if I remember correctly." "How dare you bring that up?" Eric sighed. "Look, just wait a few and your wife will be right out, okay? But heed my warning, don't interfere with our investigation." I paced back and forth for almost 10 more minutes, cursing indiscriminately. When Raven finally walked up to me, I didn't even notice her. "Honey, Raven, are you okay?" I took her in my arms, and then stood back, examining her closely. She looked great for a woman of 54, her blonde hair falling past her shoulders. Her heart-shaped face was full of life, as it had been when I first met her all those years ago. "Yeah, old man, I'm fine. Let's go home, I want to see Hunter." I could feel the eyes of the other officers on me as I guided my wife out of the station. We decided that she could pick her car up from the school when I dropped her off the next day. Then, of course, the conversation immediately turned to why she had been brought to the station in the first place. You can now check if there's a part 2 by pressing share and more.